Hi, everyone. Welcome back to First Principles. Today we have a repeat guest, Greg, and we'd be speaking about is job seeking hard? How are you doing, Greg?
I'm great. How are you doing, Sagar?
I'm very well, thank you. So, do you want to just introduce yourself again for this episode?
Yeah, happy to. My name is Greg Koga. I've been in the job market for a while, and today I know we're going to be talking about job searching, and I'm grateful that I recently landed a role. And by the time this goes live on YouTube, I'm sure I'll be in that role. But I put together a long document of tips and tricks that I found for multiple reasons. One, I wanted to have it be there for me if I'm in this position again. And two, I just want to help a lot of people because there are a lot of amazing, talented people out there out of
Hmm.
work, and it's a really hard market.
Right. So let's dive in then. I mean, I don't know if you want to approach
Yeah.
it as like a personal story or like generic thing, but I'll leave it to you. But like, how did
Mhm.
you start off on this journey?
Yeah, I started off like many. I was laid off last year and thought, oh, I'll be able to get a job. I've got all these years of experience.
Hmm.
It's never been that challenging. COVID, I was unemployed in some COVID time,
Right.
which was unique because everybody was remote and whatnot. But I learned a lot in that time frame, so I picked that back up and quickly started going through it. But I realized I was hitting some blockers that were within me.
Hmm.
And that's what I've talked about in this document. And by the time this publishes, I'll probably have it posted on LinkedIn as an article too. Um, Essentially, it was coming down to you feel depressed, you feel shame, you feel like you aren't valuable.
Hmm.
And it can really impact how you network, how you interview, if you're lucky to get an offer, how you negotiate.
Right.
And I really wanted to get past that. And I did a lot of the things, I did everything that I've talked about in this document and we'll talk about today. And I found some of them as people suggested it to me, some of them I thought of on my own, but the whole process, the whole
Right.
journey was what I wanted to document so I could help others. And so far, the feedback I've been getting is phenomenal on this.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to touch on the shame aspect of it. So, like that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, why that? And that's a very strong word and a strong feeling for something which is not your fault. So, why do you feel shame?
Well, whether it's your fault or not, you can feel shame. And
Hmm.
whether someone has a lot of runway financially or is none at all, they can feel this and they can feel equally depressed. It's amazing how that is.
Hmm.
Um, and Brene Brown, as a lot of people know, is famous for talking about shame, calling it toxic shame, or it can become toxic shame. And I think I went that direction.
Hmm.
And it can really impact and cause you to be unable to do things. It is a true form of depression. And you might be able to push through it and do it, but it'll still come out. It just oozes out of you and how you talk and how you act. And so I really had to work through that. And, one thing I did was I was able to work on asking for help. And I'll talk more about it in a little while, but that was something I wasn't good at. I don't know if it was too proud or too embarrassed. I think it was probably both.
Hmm.
But this caused me to and forced me to have to do that from my family, my friends. Um, I've always been a person, a believer in therapy, and definitely was going through therapy, and that was really helpful as well.
Right.
Um, and it just making sure that you surround yourself with that type of support, and because you're falling down, and people
Yeah.
need to help you up, and they want to help you up, and you have to give them that opportunity. That's a really important thing. And that could be in words, that could be in money for your runway, that could be in if you're going to lose your place because you don't have rent money or something, they go stay on their couch. There's so many ways to do it. But if you don't let them help you, then you're going to make life a lot harder for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, true. I mean, okay, that is interesting. So, in order to even establish, okay, so let's say somebody did have runway, what would you say? Like, should they keep doing the applications and say like just going through it as like a
Mm,
battle, or take a step back and process that? And how much time should they give it to the
yeah.
processing this feeling?
Well, I think the thing you have to really do is, and I had a friend ask me this very beginning of last year at a big layoff at a company that's well known. And he asked me, how do you do this job search thing? He had
Right.
been at this company for almost 2 decades. I said, you got to treat it like a job, 9 to 5 or less. Take lunch breaks, go for walks, take PTO, or I called it UPTO, unpaid
Hmm.
time off. And you really have to just dive in from that perspective. If you use task lists, if you use calendar, if you use email, Slack, whatever you do at your job or did in your job, treat it the same way. And that's how I did it. I would make a lot of tasks because I live off tasks and calendar. I would put all my meetings in my calendar. I typically booked a lot through Calendly. So a real good tip is use Calendly everywhere you go. Give people the links to do that. So if you're asking someone for a meeting, put your Calendly link in there for them to do it because they won't have to go back and forth on finding a time. They'll just do it.
Right. Okay. So this is basically like running a project and having a job here. But what are the components? What are the inputs for this project? Like apart
Mm.
from what you mentioned, and then how do you go about it systematically?
That's a great question. And a lot of people dive right into this. Like, let's get my resume together. Let's get to my network. Let's start applying.
Yeah.
Of course, you can do that. But I know in this market, it is going to be very difficult. There's a lot of people doing that, especially in tech.
Right.
If you really want to do this in a way that's going to be investing in this amazing time that you have, and amazing isn't as in positive, it's going to feel down,
Hmm.
but amazing as in the opportunity at hand. And that is, have you been doing what you want to do? What is it you want to do? And we can talk more about that in a little bit, but that's a really key piece. And I remember starting that 15, 20 years ago, and I just did a list of attributes. Do I want to be inside? Do I want to be at a computer? Do I want to be in tech? Do I want to be in finance? Do I want to be, what do I want to do? What is it I like? Do I want to work in an office? Do I want to commute? Do I want to travel? So we can talk more about that in a bit, but that's how it all started for me. And then I just sort of refined it over the years and years. When you really start to dive into it, you really want to make sure that you understand the current market. Everyone's different. In 2020 with COVID,
Hmm.
it was all Zoom like this. Everybody was fried from working a lot or being home with all their people, not being able to go out to restaurants or travel, things that we all did normally. And
Hmm.
it was very difficult. And that impacted how the market perceived people, how they interviewed people, what they were looking for, if they were actively listening or not. Everybody knows about Zoom burnout or whatever meeting tool you use. That was prevalent back then. So you had to adjust how you approach the market. This market is highly competitive. Seeing 500 applicants per job is not unusual in tech. I talked with one recruiter at a well-known company, not one of the fangs, and it's actually a tech-enabled business, not a tech company. And they had 2,400 applicants for one job.
Wow.
It's a very, very um, supply-heavy market right now. So you got to figure out how do you stand out, and there's many ways to do that. But you got to identify your niches, your strengths, and you got to figure out how you're going to tackle this in a sales and marketing sense.
Okay. So, I mean, we can go as deep as you want to go, but I don't know, like, what will be the benefit when it comes to the other sections of the podcast as well. So, let me
Mm,
just ask you this. Uh, the attribute list that you talked about, most people
yeah.
won't even start from there because, as you said, supply heavy market, they'll just think, I'll just get any job I'll take any job I get. Now, what's the problem with that kind of thinking?
One, there isn't a problem with getting a bridge job. Some
Okay.
people need it. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And I've talked with all sorts of folks out there, some that start driving ride shares, start working at restaurants, whatever they need to do to get some kind of income, or
Mm.
maybe they have a runway, but it's not that long. And so
Right.
they're trying to like, lengthen it out. Someone told me that 55% of people in this country, the US, live off paycheck to paycheck. So right there, you have a majority of the population needing something right away. So if you have to go get one of those roles while you look, and then when you land a role, it might be a bridge role, meaning you're getting paid what you've roughly been paid in the past, doing a roughly similar job to what you've done, maybe the exact same. It just may not be at a company you want or in the industry that you are familiar with or at the level that have been at. All of those are okay. So be okay with that too.
Okay.
Um, I was certainly okay to that, and I was fortunate with what I landed. But I'll hold off on that till I post it on LinkedIn.
No, sure, of course. Okay, so what's the next step then after the attribute identification? What did you do next, or what would you recommend people do next?
So I came into it with this attribute list, and so that helped me understand more of what I was looking for. And I'm very detail oriented. I'm very analytical overall, and I really wanted to make sure I was focused and not going to get anything right. This was in the beginning. Now, after some time, I was okay with a bridge roll.
Okay.
And you really want to then start networking. And this goes back to the first point we talked about with shame.
Hmm.
If you're feeling shame, if you're feeling down, depressed, invaluable, it won't come off well in networking and you won't be able to do a very good job.
Yeah.
You might be able to do it in your messaging on your email, but it can still come through in words like that too. So again, if you are feeling down, shameful, invaluable, depressed, really need to dive into that first before you do anything around job stuff. You can do it concurrently, but you've got to do something to pick you up, and it's got to be something that's healthy and that's going to improve you as a person because there's no guarantee we won't be back in this position in our
Hmm.
market, in ourselves.
Yeah.
We might be going through this again in 5, 10, 20 years. We don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, just on a like on a tangent, I still don't understand how can somebody like how is every job assumed to be a job for life in a way? Because I think like if you give them people like 3 or 5 year contracts, like as a tour of duty in the military, that makes more sense. You can keep renewing it, and according to the market conditions, people can get adjusted. Here, folks think that they have a job and somebody else is going to sort them out, like sort their livelihood out. So I think the promise in itself is a little faulty, but that's another
Yeah.
another thing. But yeah, to your point, you still end up probably looking for another opportunity later on. Okay, but to your point about feeling bitter, it comes off as what in different ways, right? Like how even if you are using the correct words, I think people can get the vibes of resentment or entitlement or desperation or being needy. What is that you're trying to avoid when you're networking
Hmm.
with other people?
Yeah, being needy or desperate certainly can come off, and any job seeker, no matter their feelings, can come
Hmm,
off like that.
hmm,
Um, Feeling that shame, that toxicity, that bitterness can certainly come out in a more um, bitter is a good word way. And so being able to work through that is really critical. And so some people will talk about, taking time off at first. If
hmm.
you have that ability to take a week, a month, whatever, it can be really beneficial for the healing process. And that is a great thing to consider, again, if you can do that. If you can't or you need a job right away, then go find something real quick that will bring in income. Hopefully, can pay your need bills, not all your bills, but the needs: food, shelter, clothes. And from there, you can then maybe take that time to not job search and just do that job for a month or two, and you can heal then and come off better when you're networking. Some people can fake it really well too. I am not that kind of person. I've worked on it. I'm sure I could if I did worked harder, but I wear my heart on my sleeve. So
Yeah.
I wanted to invest in this time in that way.
So people who can fake it very well, are they still amongst us? Because I think that's like an old timey thing. But I might be wrong about that.
No, in my time of various forms of self-care, I've learned a lot more about people and individuals in those safe, vulnerable spaces. And we are all very similar. Whether you have $10 in your bank account or $1 million in your bank account, you're going to have similar stresses and anxieties, depression, as well as positive things.
Right, right, right. Okay, so there's another question on the bridge job. Now, how truthful or forthright do you want to be if you are going to an employer which is a prospective bridge employer to yourself? Because everybody wants commitment and loyalty, and then they're like, okay,
Yeah.
are you what how do you navigate those waters?
Mm. Well, obviously you're not going to tell your prospective employee or that this is a bridge role. It might be a 2 or 3 year role, and in some people's careers, that's a very long time.
Hmm,
For example, a startup, the average tenure is like 1.4 years, and so that's not very long. That's not even 18 months. So you might have what is that type of tenure at a company while this market works itself out, and while you can find time to keep looking. I was hesitant in the beginning to do that personally because I don't know when I was going to have time. If I joined a company and I was going to be working 40 to 50 hours a week and I have a family at home, obviously nights and weekends would be when I'd be looking, but how do you interview? How do you navigate that? It is possible, but it's also very easy to burn out from trying to keep it all going.
yeah,
And you take on the risk of your performance suffering because of it, and then you might have an issue at that job. So I saw that as a major hurdle for me. Not everybody has that hurdle. Some people can pull that off. Some people don't have the dependence that they have, and they can easily use that time or work more the day of their day job in the evenings.
right, right. So if it's not a role where you are stuck where you have to be like you're getting paid by the hour because you have to perform in a certain way. So, for example, in a restaurant, right? So you can't. So that might become harder, but in some way it could be easier as well because it's flexi work, or you could work part-time. And if you need to go out for an interview or do something else, then you get a time. So it really need to figure out what works
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, you might have like a 3 to 11 shift at a restaurant
Hmm.
in the evening. So that's a lot easier from that perspective. But if you had a bridge role or contract role,
Hmm.
you might be working 9 to 5, and that makes that interviewing really tough.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind too. Um, the big thing I would say is throughout all of this, just don't give up.
Hmm.
Ask for help, get support, go to therapy, use the tools you can. There are plenty of therapists and services out there that use sliding scale and free services or pay it later. So there's ways to make it work financially so you don't have to exhaust a lot of resources that otherwise could be put towards, food, clothes, and shelter.
Right.
Um, but yeah, you don't want to give up on that stuff. Some people I've run into have kept track of a lot of this. They, every application, every interview, and that's really I envy that. I part of me really wanted to do that, but I also knew that uh, from all the stories I heard, this was going to be a long haul, and it was because everyone's 500 applicants per job or more, and some of it's just pure luck to get something
Yeah.
because there's 25 people, with all the check marks on the job description. And so you really just have to be careful on how you maintain your own self well-being. So again, back to treat it like a job, go for those walks, get out for exercise. If you want to take a day and go for a bike ride or a hike or whatever you need, go do it. Whatever it is that replenishes your soul. So you really have to treat it like a job in that sense. Um, but in the end, it's just don't give up on interviewing, keep networking, keep applying.
What happens if I mean I've had this with me at least, but in the bridge jobs that I've had in the past, that I had a certain amount of curiosity which sort of opened up avenues for using certain skills I did not know were marketable anyway. And then that kind
Hmm.
of became a new career, which is nice. Now, is that something which you've experienced or you've experienced people around you having?
Yeah, it has. I mean, we all have skills from our functional roles professionally that carry into this
Hmm.
new role. If you're I work in product management, so there's plenty that carries in. If you're in engineering, if you're in marketing, sales, if you work at nonprofits, if I have teachers, nurses, so many skills you can bring into this to help you, and you'll see it as you go through it.
Okay.
Um, it's really helpful to see that you do have this tool belt of skills that can really carry across many ways in life.
Okay.
That's a good pick me up right there.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to, how do you drive this good feeling you have and keep it there? How do you go through, people that just um, apply to a lot of roles, hundreds and hundreds, and they get like one hit. It's very depressing. It can lead to burnout real quick. And so you got to figure out, how do I get past that? How do I drive a more targeted, smart approach to this? Because that's really what it comes down to. And that goes back to the skills.
Hmm.
What skills do I bring? What do I want to do? And how do I really get into using my abilities to get there? And if you're really good at asking for help, you're going to be really you're gonna have some good momentum. If you're having a hard time with that, like I did, you have to figure out, how do I get better at that? What can I do that I'm good at to do that? Am I extroverted? Am I introverted? Am I good at email newsletters? Am I, or writing, or am I better like this live? And you try to leverage that to help you find ways to get better.
And if you, what about self-employment or starting a business? If that's been on your
Mm.
mind, do you think, and especially if it's like low investment, low capital business, is that something you'd recommend to try out?
A lot of people are going the fractional route right now to help give themselves some side business and income.
Hmm.
That is an excellent way forward in many roles. Not every, of course, but it is possible. And I thought about doing that. I've done that in the past, and it was successful in landing my roles that I
Hmm.
did, full-time roles. So it can lead in great ways to both not just income, but to finding something that turns into something full-time.
Right.
And I love that approach because the contract to hire thing is something that I personally believe we could do a lot more of in this country, because it gives you a sense to really leverage getting to know each other over the long haul. Instead of 4 conversations and an offer,
Hmm.
you could spend months and months working together to make sure this is a good place for me. And they can say, oh, you're really good at this and this. And we see you could also help over here, even though you're not doing it yet. Now you have a much less risky path forward together. Everybody uses the dating analogy, but it's a pretty good one, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we could look at including more of in our society moving forward. And there's ways around the challenges people will bring up right off the bat.
In terms, going back to the attributes, in terms of being
Yes.
selective, now I understand that, of course, you want what you want, but then there's also the market. But the weird thing about the market is that it's not like a simple law of nature, like the second law of thermodynamics. It's responding to other people. It's a cumulative of all that. So you are a participant as well as a mover in some way. Now, how best to think about this? Because I might want to work remotely, and that's what I really want to do. But I don't see the signals that those kind of jobs exist or pay well.
Mm,
So where do you draw the line? When do you become stubborn? When do you loosen up? What's your heuristic on it?
that's a good question. I think it's all in your soul right here in your heart and what you feel and believe. And early on, I was thinking, oh, yeah, I'm definitely not going to an office ever again. Um, but then after some time, I realized this is silly. If I'm going to be taking a targeted approach that's smart, if I'm going to be going after areas, types of companies that I want to work at, whether it's their environment and their culture and their values, or whether it's more in the industry they're in, I need to be, if that's my priority in both of those, then I need to be a little less on the remote thing. And so then I started also adding in job searches for myself locally with the hybrid model. Very, very few places are like 5 days a week like it used to be. It's very much a 2, 3 day a week in there. And also some of them are flexible because if
Yeah,
it's a 90-minute commute each way, why would you want to go there 3 days a week? Some people could. I have a young family. I wouldn't do that
yeah,
personally, but some of them are flexible where you could do 1 or 2 days a week and make it work. And they're willing to work with you because they see the value in you, the human. And
yeah.
that's really, unfortunately, a rare thing to encounter, but it is possible and it is out there.
So, okay, so let me ask you about something else. People have their identities, and I guess this is more men than women, but their identities are so enmeshed with what they're doing. What if they lose their job? It's kind of like losing your life. It shouldn't be like that, but it is like that. Now, if you have a spiritual practice or a community outside just making things or whatever, like how much do you lean into them in such a way where you are not a burden and you're not really soliciting pity, but you are genuinely trying to contribute in some other way? You see what I'm saying? Like sometimes you want to be involved in volunteering, but it's mostly about trying to escape from something else. What's the
Hmm.
right course to chart there?
I'm glad you said that escape part there because that's really key. This is where knowing your passions is so critical.
Hmm.
What are you passionate about? How can you help others? And me, I've been in product management now for 8, 9 years. And about halfway into that, I was really enjoying people that would come up to me and ask me, how did you get into product management? I'm interested in it. And I love those conversations. I would do those coffees or those Zoom calls all the time. And so I remembered that and I thought, how can I do more of that? And in this market, it still exists, but it's also a lot of people are asking, how are you doing your job search? What are you finding? And that's part of the reason I put this document together and ultimately that LinkedIn article.
Hmm.
How can I help others? How can I show them what I did? And maybe that exact thing will help them, or it will cause them to think of ideas that works for them in their situation, their roles, their career.
Yeah.
And that's all what it's about is helping people get that momentum going or increase it. If you want to do volunteer things, some people will go do that. They'll go help at soup kitchens. They'll go help at hospitals. They will do all sorts of things. And that's awesome. I did it as how can I volunteer my time to help others in this coaching, mentoring mindset. I loved it. It's really fulfilling.
Hmm.
And coming from my career of being an IC, it was an area that I really wanted to do more of professionally, but I obviously was unemployed. So how can I scratch that itch? And this is what I did.
Right.
And it's one way to do it, but there's so many others that people use as, like you said, an escape also can be a good thing.
Hmm.
It can be, oh, I'm going to go volunteer at this hospital and it's going to be wonderful to help others and come out of there smiling and happy. And it's going to help me in my days of looking for work and networking and interviewing and all that. So I wouldn't call that a negative escape. I'd call that a positive one.
So is it okay? So that theory that folks, that moral hazard theory that if you're not getting paid, people they might not want to work that much, but people want to do
Mm.
something, right? So we can leverage that, especially It's not like a hand to mouth, month to month kind of situation. This might be a good sort of way. Okay. I do have one more question before we get back to your document. If you don't
Mhm.
mind, this is a little blue skies. I think we're too attached to our career tracks. Like the whole point of a
Mm.
market economy is that it's dynamic, which means careers that like app development wasn't really a thing 10 years ago. It is now. And of course, like we did not graduate app developers out of the blue. People switched. So if somebody is a white collar worker and the blue collar market is hot and they can quickly get trained and work there and they're fine, would you recommend that and vice versa? Or is that going to
Mm.
be too much of a, difference?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm one of those. Most of us have switched careers. I used to be in finance accounting. Before that, I started in sales and marketing. So I've
Right.
had, you could say, three careers so far. And ultimately, you've got to go with what you love. And it goes back to that attributes thing. What is it that drives your passions? What
Mm.
is it that you love? And that's a helpful thing that I don't think enough people talk about or do to give themselves that foundation. And it will change. So every 5 years or so, it's good to, as silly as this sounds, put a reminder in 5 years from now and go back to it and double
Right.
check it because
Right.
your life will change. 5 years ago, I didn't have a young family, and now I do. So my attributes have certainly changed. And 5 years, 10 years from now, they may change again. When it comes to the white collar, blue collar stuff, if you're going to go into blue collar work as a bridge role or something to pay the necessary bills, you can do that. It depends on your set of circumstances. What are those required bills? Do you have student loans, mortgage, car payments, lots of subscriptions, and you want to keep it all? Well, the numbers are what they are. Is blue collar going to pay for that or not?
Mm.
If you are and you can do that, it's a good way to extend your runway, and it's a good way to not be feeling really down in the drudgery of job searching and interviewing and all that. And you can do it, but it'd be more part-time than full-time. And in
Right.
which case, still treat it like a job. Part-time job is a job.
Yeah. Or you might like it. You become a rough ant. You might actually become a drill inspector or
I
something.
know someone that did that. They were in tech and they went to become a handyman.
Mm.
And he decided, I'm not going to do this job search after all. I'm going to become a handyman. It's something I enjoy doing on the side. And that's great.
Yeah.
There's so many businesses that have started that way. That, I mean, I'm a big fan of microbreweries and that beer scene. And so many breweries have started because somebody just found they liked homebrewing and then they found they were good at it. And then they found, oh, they're really good at it. And then suddenly they win medal and they're like, let's make this my job.
Yeah. 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 This might not be a problem in America, at least as far as I'm concerned, but I have seen this, like especially from the culture I'm from. It's a big status thing, right? So it's like, oh my
Mm.
God.
Oh yeah, back to your identity point. Yes,
Yeah.
I can speak to that too. In fact, I was just in therapy yesterday talking about this. It is prevalent, very prevalent in the U.S.
Okay.
and in other countries like the U.S. And um, it is more male focused identity piece, but it's
Mm.
certainly not all at all by any stretch. And it's something that we all can work to be better at. And it comes down to just how can you understand that deep down at the very root of who we are as people, it's not a bank account, it's not a type of car, it's not where we live. It really comes down to are we people with feelings and emotions and love and awareness? And
Yeah.
really, how can we just really align on that and understand that you and I are very much the same like that. And whether I am employed or not, whether I am a VP or an associate or an intern, it doesn't matter. It's are you happy? Is what you're doing happy? Is it
Mm.
giving you that fulfillment that you really want?
Right.
That's
Right.
really key.
Right. Okay. Uh, how much can you drive on passion versus discipline and craftsmanship? Like, can these like because I think passion can run out very quickly.
Mhm.
And then you need a certain ethic of craftsmanship and discipline to carry forward. But obviously, of course, you don't want to like keep doing it if it's becoming dry. Otherwise, what's the point? Your energy is getting depleted. So, what's your correct amount of balance that you'd recommend?
Mm. Well, passion has got to be there all the time, so you can't use it a lot.
Hmm.
And think of like your gas in your fuel tank, and you got to use it sparingly when you need it. Use it, and when you don't, save it. Um, if you can really drive that craftsmanship and that um, the being diligent and how you can focus on that again, instead of applying to a lot of jobs, Focus on what are those attributes? Are there companies that fit a target list of the type of places you want to be at, the environments, the culture, the values,
Hmm.
the industry, of course, and how can you find that list? And that was one thing, one aspect I did was I determined all of that early on so that I could identify who they were and how I would approach that moving forward and what data signals are out there when I do research on a company for a job.
Right.
Or the job may not exist, but I found the company and it really fits. So now I want to keep an eye out for when jobs come up on that company.
Okay, so in that kind of a scenario, when the job doesn't exist, do you think it's maybe send out an not an RFP, but some kind of a proposal where can you create a job for yourself? Is that something that you want to
Mm.
try sometimes?
I think in most, uh, not in this market, it could be done. I'm sure it has been. It's a lot harder in this market. If it was 3 years ago, absolutely. If it was 10 years ago, absolutely. I
Okay,
think after a few years of getting through this or however long it takes, absolutely.
right.
Instead, I looked at it as how could I network? How could I build my list of people here and get to know the place and talk with them? What's your experience like? Are you, if they're new, what was the interview experience like? If they've been there a couple years or longer, what has your experience been like as an employee there? How would you describe it? What do you like? What do you don't like? There's so many different types of questions you can go find online about this, or simply ask ChatGPT, and you can come up with those questions to interview these people. And it's a great informational interview, and you can build up your network that way very quickly, both on LinkedIn and by knowing them. And then you can always close it out by asking for introductions. Who else do you think I should meet here? So if you
Hmm.
talk to somebody who's in sales at a company that you really like, but you're in, like me, product management, they'll know the product management team somewhat or have a connection there somehow. Ask for an introduction there. Find someone who's open to talking about their experience. And that's a great way to build your network, because then 3 months later, there's a job that pops up. All of a sudden, you've got a couple of contacts there, and you can hit each of them up and ask about the job, who the hiring manager is, what do they know about this role, if anything. And lastly, would they be open to talking about being a referral? Because that's going to help you get above those 500 to the top 25, probably. Now, they may only pick five, but you got a 1 in 5 chance is better than a 1 in 100 chance or 1 in 500 chance.
Hmm.
And, for me, I was looking at a lot of bigger companies. And so that makes it a little bit easier because they'll typically have lots of roles available as they hire. And so when you build those networks up, it can really help. You need luck on your side. Let's not discount that in this whole
Hmm.
conversation. Luck is so key, and it's out of your control. You just have to accept it, and you got to keep plugging along.
Okay. Okay. So I think this is a good point to bring in Never Search Alone, the entity. And I guess you had one
Yeah.
more to talk about, right? Which was I'm forgetting the
Yeah,
name.
well, we'll talk about Never Search Alone. So I was working on how to do all of this and doing a lot with it, with emailing people, with calls, with interviews. So much was going on, and I was kind of stuck. I was making progress. I was going the distance in interviews, but I felt like I still needed some more support, some more structure, and the support was the big one.
Hmm.
And someone in my network recommended this book to me. It's called Never Search Alone. And this is a book that is all about not being alone in your job search. So the idea is you form a job search council, and there's a huge community of us together in Slack that are part of this, and we all have our own councils.
Right.
Council is like 4 to 6 people. You come together, you go through the exercises in the book, and it's very straightforward. It takes a couple of months. You could do it shorter, but it's hard to do that because of outside factors. But you're trying to identify a more structured version of those attributes we talked about. You're trying to understand more about how can we create a safe, vulnerable space? And that's the first thing you do as a group, because you don't know these people.
Hmm.
Come in, you build a charter. How can we be open and honest and vulnerable? And whether you're crying on a call because you're feeling so down, you're scared you did bad on an interview, you need a debrief on it. Getting feedback from people about how you do mock interviews, because that's the first place you could start doing mock interviews. We'll talk about more of that. And ultimately, in the end, you're trying to build up, what do you love? What do you not like? What are your strengths and weaknesses? These are the attributes that you're trying to do. And then you're trying to understand from talking with people you've worked with in the past. And if you're a student and you don't have a career history yet, talk with your professors, if you had an internship, talk with your manager, talk with your friends, figure out who you are. How do you come off? How are you perceived? And if you do have that career experience, what went well? What didn't go well? And then see where the conversation goes, because really trying to hone in on what are the themes and where I can improve, and what are the themes that I could really double down on. And that helps in your interviews because you can really figure that out from interviews by simply asking in the interviews. What I'm interested to hear why you wanted to talk to me. Can you tell me what you saw in my background that would be great for this role? Now
Hmm.
you know how to focus on that interview. And it's kind of like asking for the answers, but not how they got to the answers. That's
Right.
for you. So there's that. But in the end, you're trying to create what's called a candidate market fit. Think of it as like your mission statement as a human in your
Hmm.
professional life. I want to be a function at a certain type of company and that has certain types of attributes. And it's like, 2, 3 sentence line. And that's your networking pitch, your elevator pitch. And that's really helpful for sharing out. And then also your JSC, the Job Search Council, is really critical throughout the whole process. You're interviewing, you're negotiating, you're networking, you're having hard days, and you're helping them too. They're having hard days. They're interviewing, they're negotiating, they're trying to figure out what their attributes are. And you help each other all the time. We meet weekly, and we're turning it into a career council from that.
Hmm.
Meaning now we're going to do the same thing, but help each other in our careers moving forward. So we're really trying to build a strong bond and
Right.
not be alone. And then you have all this networking that comes from it. This Slack community we're in is thousands and thousands of people, and it's grown 5x in 12 months. Volunteer led, no marketings, word of mouth. And it's been really taken off because the market is so tough job search wise. And it is such a proven method that it does work. And you just have to buy the book and you have to buy into the process, most importantly. But I'm a big fan of it, and I joke, but it's sad. But it's true. Like some people fall down this path. It becomes if you don't do something like this and feel the support,
Hmm.
you can quickly go down dark holes and have a dark period of life that could be otherwise averted.
So you're saying if we go through something like layoff or even if you left the job yourself and then you don't have the peer group, then you can go down dark hole.
I think so. Yeah, because a job search is so isolating. It's
Right.
so on your own.
And shameful
And this
for
is
a lot of people.
There is, and it helped me with that first and foremost. And the way everything is structured, I work well personally in structured environments, and
Hmm.
so this gave me that structure to like revalidate a lot of things. So I did my attributes list 15 years ago. What is
Right.
it now?
Right.
This helped me get there. But I also had 8 years of product management experience and 20 years of a career. Well, I want to get that. I want to hear this from other people so I know who I am now as a professional because it's
Hmm.
obviously has changed as I've grown.
Right. And I'm looking at it more like a fraternity in the best sense of the word, because of
Mm.
course there's this big community, but then you've got the JSC, the council, which is 5 or 6. It's very intimate. And then if you transition away from a job search team to a career team, then it's like a lifelong thing if you want it to be a lifelong thing. So is that your aim as well with your council?
Yeah. Yeah. It's to me, it's to be a lifelong thing because, or at least until I retire.
Hmm. Hmm.
But,
Yeah.
it's also building relationships. And now I have 4 people in my corner helping me. Their networks are available to me just like mine is to them. And then all the other people in the Slack community. I know if I found someone on there that is a part of this community, I have zero hesitation in going to them and saying, "Hey, I'm in this community too, and I saw so and so." Even if it's 5, 10 years from now, and I haven't done anything with the book or anything because I've been working,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's
Yeah.
it's such a strong community and fraternity, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that my council, because I was also part of that, and I still linger. But they encouraged me to go independent, and I could, so I did, which is pretty helpful for me because
Yeah,
I thought I was just like putting myself in a box which I did not like. But speaking of boxes, the candidate market fit. Now, isn't that too specific? Aren't you shutting doors for yourself if something else might come in?
good question. A lot of people in that community I saw would be very specific. So it could be like, I want to be a product manager at a Series B or later funded cybersecurity startup.
Hmm.
One, I love how specific it is. I think that's awesome for networking. You could throw that on LinkedIn all day long and everybody will know what you're looking for.
Right.
You probably get some good traction with it. I personally did not have that. I was looking at something that was more around the environment, the cultures, and the values, and the family friendly life work balance. That was my focus.
Right.
And so I knew there were certain keywords I wanted to put in there as a part of that. So it was a little different. You make it what you want. This is your career, this is your life.
Hmm.
You can make it what you want. And it's about what is truly right here for you. And so that's part of what this whole process is having other people help you find what that is, whether it's people in your listening tour, people in your job search council, but you're ultimately trying to get to something that is you. And again, it will change. In 5, 10 years, mine will probably change and it'll be something different, and that's okay.
Okay. Um, my priors for adult relationships, any kind, is that it needs to be like a win-win and give take or give or whatever. So I am the one who's seeking. I'm really finding it hard to figure out what am I giving while I am in that networking relationships because I don't
Mm.
want to just ask for help because otherwise it could become toxic. So how do you navigate that?
Well, in the Never Search Alone community, everybody knows everybody else, and they feel this too, is there for each other. So there's not that concern. Now, in their standard networking approach, it's always good to, if you're meeting someone at a company that you're interested in, there's a role, or you just want to be there for the future, it's always good to tell them up front, I'm always happy to help you. So if you
Hmm.
ever need introductions, please let me know. I'm just a message away on LinkedIn. So trick there is make sure you get those notifications on your phone or email, however you communicate with them. And it comes down to saying that in a clear, separate paragraph way. And so when you do that in a conversation, a lot of people will hear that and they'll really be appreciative of it. And it's a good thing to close out a conversation with because then they know that you're there for them.
Hmm.
And it's a good way for them to remember you, even if it's years and years from now. They might pull you up on LinkedIn and be like, who is this again? Oh, I remember that. And it happens. It's amazing how people remember things. I've had people in networking that I haven't seen in 15 years, talked with in 15 years, and we worked together and they reached back out and they were fantastic networkers for me. They were great areas of support for me, people of support for me. And, then of course, and they brought up the funny point. It's funny how this is. We haven't seen each other, talked with each other in 15 years, but we're both helping each other a ton. Yet maybe one of us worked with someone for 6 years and sat next to them in the office and you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And so it's just funny how different people are in different parts of their lives and how they are open to helping people or able to help people in those times.
Okay. Okay. So to your tips again, anything that you've missed so far?
Well, we've talked a lot about Never Search Alone. I again buy the book. I tell people it's the best $20 you'll spend in your job search without
Yeah, I'd
question.
agree.
And then we've talked about a lot of things. One area I think that's really important is to focus on mock interview practice. Um, this is something that I didn't want to do for a long time, and I've always had a good storytelling ability in interviews. But I don't know why, but I was hesitant to do it. And then I started doing it. And I was doing it with people in multiple communities, like Never Search Alone and other online communities I'm in,
Hmm.
whether it's my local product management meetup group, other national or global communities online. I even found some great ones where I was mock interviewing with folks on the other side of the planet. And that was really cool because you hear the same themes and the feedback you get.
Right.
So we would jump on for an hour. One person would interview the other with a couple of questions and take notes, give the feedback, and then we'd reverse it. And typically for me, we would be in the same functional role. So for me, it's product management. We would both be there. Level doesn't matter too much unless they're brand new. Then
Right.
maybe it's a little different. And so that was really helpful because it validated a lot of themes. When you're hearing it from people from around the world after dozens of them, you start to see, if you don't quickly, this is what I need to work on.
Hmm.
And when you can get that, you can start to research, how do I work on that? How do I get better at my star stories? How do I get better at how do I get better at answering a analytics question? Or how do I get better at the first part, which is more of the small talk?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Everybody has their challenges. And so
Right.
it's really a interesting way to see that and start to use it. And if you're in a thing like Never Search Alone, you can bring all that to your job search council and be like, how do you get past this? Did anybody else solve this for themselves? I'm a bit stuck, and they'll help you.
Hmm.
Or they'll bring it to you and you'll help them. And it's awesome to help other people like that.
Okay. So mock interviews. Um, what else? Negotiation as well is an important part of Never Search Alone as well, right? So people are in a situation where they think it's essentially a one-sided deal. I want a job, they have the money. Why negotiate? Why would you? What's your case for negotiation here? And it's not just money, it's also other things that you need to negotiate for.
It's true. It's true. And that's a big part of Never Search Alone is, getting the right resources, support, budget, depending on your role. If you're a people leader, you've got to have all of those things. And there's a lot of things that aren't under the payroll line item on a P&L. They can be on certifications, they can be on professional development, they could be on having coaching, they could be on other areas of the P&L that has room. And
Mm.
so they can work with that. And you just need to understand what that is. So it's really a conversation. And in this market, it's tough because a lot of people are really stressed or scared they're going to lose the role, whether it's, and I've heard of this happening by a number of people where they try to negotiate and the role gets pulled.
Right.
Now, clearly they dodged something there, but in the
Yes.
moment, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And when you do negotiate, and it's not just for more salary, you can negotiate for stock, bonus, signing bonus, still a thing. You can support resources and budget,
Mm.
certifications, professional development, coaching, so
MBA.
many things. You could, in this market, maybe not if you're a certain level. I didn't hear much about that, but negotiations are a key piece. And that's something that I think is, you need to give that as much effort, and it's in a much more condensed area or timeline, I should say,
Mm. Mm.
than in this job search before that. In this part, you have an offer, you've probably got a 3 to 5 day window, depending on if there's a weekend there. So my recommendation is look at how you want to negotiate. If you have support, if you have people helping you, talk with them how they do it. Does someone put together a tip stock on this? That's one thing I've done in Never Search Alone is I created a lot of documents in that community and they're bookmarked in that Slack. So
Right.
you see other people's templates, you see other people's opinions. The community of volunteers have put together a lot of things. There is an immense amount of resources to help people in different parts of the journey. So
Right.
you're not going to be having to recreate the wheel.
Right. So I know this is not the case, but just to check again with you, Never Search Alone is not just US based, right? It's global. There are people from
It
all
is
over the
global.
world.
That's right. Basically, we have it in North America. There is some South American and Central American folks too. We have the EU or EMEA area based on time zones. This is all mostly because of time zone
Yeah.
challenges. And then APAC, of course. And it's grown a ton. I can tell you right now, we've eclipsed 2,000 job search councils as of this recording in early September 2024. And a year ago, when I joined, my first JSC was 454.
Hmm.
So it's grown 5x.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine was 888, which was
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Triple infinity.
triple infinity. Yeah. It was so great that I just went independent. So I'm actually glad about that because I wouldn't have made that call if I wouldn't have had that experience with my JSC members. So it was very interesting. Now, have you seen vis-a-vis networking, vis-a-vis let's say sensitivity to more formal versus informal cultures? And I know everything is malleable, but I'm just taking a snapshot over here. Again, my experience, it's very easy to make friends and network in the US. Not so easy in the UK
Mm.
and India, at least. These are two other countries I've lived in. Did you see any issues when it comes to cultural clashes? Like, are these tips applicable everywhere, or there has to be some, let's say, localization that needs to be done before you implement them?
I would say it's both. Absolutely.
Okay.
A lot of this is a good foundation to start with.
Hmm.
So if you're US based and you decide to move to Europe or APAC area and you really want to bring this with you, do it. And then just make sure everything you know and deep down feel everything is written in pencil. So yes, cultural is a massive thing that's different.
Hmm.
How it's done in different countries around the world or regions is really important to be aware of. And I think the one thing that's wonderful about Never Search Alone is that because it's global and because these regional not chapters, but regional groups of people are helping each other. You can start to see, even in APAC, I mean, what people are doing in Australia versus what they're doing in India are very different, but then you can learn from each other and you can see what's working. And like I said, I did mock interviews with people on the other side of the planet in India, and I loved how I got some common themes and I loved how I got some different perspectives on it. And it's
Hmm.
not right or wrong, it's just really helpful to know.
Hmm.
And it's wonderful from that perspective, just as I gave them perspective on their interviewing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you said that, of course, we need to get a tribe and a peer group that works with us, and they also have similar motives because we don't again just want people helping us and giving us sympathy because that only goes so far. Now, who are the kind of people you need to go away from? Because there are certain people where I feel they'll pull you down and perhaps it's just going to become like a pity party. Oh yeah, the world's bad, everything's bad, businesses are bad, blah 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 blah. How do you get out of that doom loop? Because it can have real world consequences.
Oh, yeah. Well, we all go through that. I went through that myself multiple times. And this is where asking for help and having people there for you is really needed. And maybe it's a sign you just need to take some of that unpaid time off. Again, treat it like a job. One thing I've done in the Never Search Alone world is because I did a lot of volunteer coach mentoring there in the community, I ended up joining the moderator mentorship group.
Hmm.
So every job search council has a moderator. They are the leader in terms of facilitation. But in reality, they're really doing their own work just like everyone else. And they're just making sure, when are we meeting? What's the agenda? Okay, we got to do this, we got to do that. And they have an additional channel in the Slack to help as a moderator. So they talk with other moderators, they get advice. How did you do it? And that's one that I've seen as the mentor, as a part of the moderator mentors group, is
Hmm.
that's a common theme is that not all JSCs, but some will have one person who's just in one of those moods and they're in it for weeks and weeks and it's really hard and it can bring the group down.
Oh
But the
yeah.
group is there to bring people out of it. And a lot of times I think we don't hear about it because the group helps bring the person out of it. And it's the ones that I see where the person is in that weeks long mood and the group is having a hard time and getting frustrated because it slows the group down. And they're at a point of, what do we do? What are we not doing we could do? Or what do you recommend we do? And I've had conversations with those folks before. It's every situation is different. Most of them, they work through it because the person in the end that's having a hard time is just really feeling down and
Hmm.
it's really hard. They're coming from that isolation world into this group world and maybe they haven't been open and vulnerable enough. Maybe they're just needing to go to therapy more. Maybe they're just having other parts of their life run into challenges. I've known people in this job search market, but they've also been losing parents or they've had sick kids or whatever it is, and it's brutal. And so that's where you just really have to accept help and support and love from people who you never met before.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So last section of the podcast. And Greg, what's next for you? What are your other projects apart from the job that you're going to about start?
Yeah. Well, the other part I wanted to chat about real quick was how I think it's really beneficial for getting coaching services.
Okay.
And there are many out there.
All right.
Lewis Lynn is one that's well known, and I think in the product world or tech world pretty well. But there are tons others out there, whether they're a resume service, but there are more inclusive ones where it's about your resume, your LinkedIn, how you network, how you interview, how you negotiate, the full cycle, right? And so the way I think of this is in product management, you have discovery. What is
Hmm.
the problem and why should we do it? And then you have delivery of how are we going to do it and when is it going to be delivered? And then you check back and make sure it's successful.
Right.
Well, in this world, Never Search Alone is wonderful for the discovery part. The delivery part is where I think coaching services can really help. And I found one named Career Sprout. And this was a massive win for me because I needed help in getting an offer. I went 0 for 10 in interviews going the distance and not getting an offer. Four of those were canceled after I completed the interview process.
Hmm.
Six of them, I believe, filled the roles. Two of them I know did because they gave me feedback and we had a conversation to close it out. The other four, I don't know what happened. And I was really frustrated by that. So a friend told me about this coaching service. And while most coaches will help you with your resume, your LinkedIn, your interviewing, I wanted hands-on help. I wanted to really dive deep on the details of my interviewing and understand where could I get better?
Hmm.
Why am I 0 for 10? That's kind of ridiculous. Like clearly I've got a lot there, but I'm missing this much.
Right.
And other people might find that helpful. Other people might need less help. But the point is be open to coaching services. And I'm a big fan of Career Sprout. Tell a lot of people about them. I think they can help a lot of folks. But check them out. Check out the document. There's a link there to their website. I also recommend if you want something different or lower cost, go look for those. They're out there. There are books. There are coaches that will do hourly. And it's just really in this market, you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to navigate the individual persons who you interview with throughout the whole process. Each of them
Hmm.
have a bias maze.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to navigate and you have to do well and do well on your answers of your interviews to get them to like you and want you to move forward.
Yeah. I'd say if you have a job currently, this is the time to start career coaching because you want to build up your hedge quickly, so that if the time comes, well, it might come, you're ready. So it's an
Yeah.
ongoing thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure they help with
So
discovery as well. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, they do. They do. And I think it's a good way to meld them together. There is a Venn diagram of it. And this is my personal opinion. Other people have found they don't need a coaching service. They get it. That's
Hmm.
great.
Hmm.
The goal of Never Search Alone is try to find that ideal role where you can be there for a long time, not something where you're going to be back in this market for in a year or two. Of course,
Right.
if you get laid off, it happens. But can you find something that you can be in and happy in for years and years?
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
Now, from
Yeah, you want to say something? I was like,
Well, I was just going to say, you asked me about my
yes.
projects next. Well, I'm going to launch this doc as a LinkedIn article. It'll be on my profile as well, so people can read it and learn from it. And I have a lot on there about how I did it, different tricks I found. There's a really cool networking trick there that you'll see. I love it, and I did it partially for myself so that if I'm back in this position, I can go back to it. And then also, I'm excited that I'll be moving into a product management role starting on in less than a week, and that'll be fun. It'll be my first people leadership role, and I'm
Mm,
really excited about that. So I've been studying up on that as well as where I'll be focusing on for that role, and then ultimately in the end, it's where do I go from here with this coaching mentoring that's not part of my day job. And right now, I'm going to not step back so much, but just kind of go a little more passive with it to
mm,
enjoy not having to search and interview and network and all of that, but also know that I can't let it sit idle for a long time. It's
right.
something that I think a lot of people are learning in this market. We need to keep that going. So while I may not be actively applying and interviewing, I am going to want to keep my network strong. I am going to want to help others as much as I can realistically. Um, Good tip I've heard about from people is when you're sharing your Calendly link out a lot of times, because you should do that on all networking calls, all everything. It's so great. You get so many things popping into your calendar. It's great.
Yeah.
But when you get a job, go adjust that availability because otherwise you'll forget about it and then things will start popping up in your calendar. And I've heard people having to change that. So you can change it to fit. When can you do it? 4:30 to 6 or 8 to 9 o'clock or whatever works for you in your life. Make sure that you remember to do that because otherwise you'll forget about that and you might miss some calls. And it's never good when people are needing help and you don't show.
Yes. Yes. No, that's true. Okay. Parting thoughts then, Greg. Do you have any, can you capsulize this big document in perhaps a bumper sticker or like one line?
Um, Use a targeted approach and ask for help.
Got it. All right.
That's what you have to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll say this, Never Search Alone helped me get better at asking for help. I was not good at it before that, and it's really helped me in that. So if other folks out there need another reason for it, that's the biggest one that I found initially. And since then, it's been so many other reasons that I can't see it not being in my life.
Yeah. No, this was definitely a game changer for me. And thank you for this episode. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to be here. All I can say is check out my LinkedIn profile. You'll see the article on there in the next few days. And if you ever have questions, you can always message me there. I do get those notifications on my phone. And make sure you do reach out to people for help, whether you know them or it's therapy or something else. Never
Yeah.
search alone. Really, really does help in this world.
Perfect. All right, folks. With that, see you soon. Goodbye.